Welcome back, everyone, to the Ultimate Biology Study Guide Explainer. Today, we're taking the giant, mind-boggling complexities of the living world and turning them into a clear, totally exam-ready blueprint. I know textbooks can sometimes just feel like a massive wall of text, right? But today, we're translating all those core biology concepts into a format that actually makes sense. If you've been struggling to connect the dots between plant types, animal habitats, and ecosystems, you are in exactly the right place.
Here's the game plan for today's session. We're going to define biodiversity, sort out the plant and animal kingdoms, check out some incredible habitats and adaptations, and finally wrap up with how we can actually protect our living world.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1. What exactly is biodiversity? Or, as I like to call it, the ultimate multiplayer game.
To really wrap your head around this, think of biodiversity as a massive, completely wild co-op system. You've got tons of players, the plants and animals, all hanging out in one particular region. And here is the golden rule. Literally everyone relies on everybody else to survive. It's like trees are your base camp, right? They dish out the essential food and shelter. Meanwhile, the animals are out there doing the fetch quests. A bird eats a berry, flies across the map, drops a seed, and boom, the forest continues to grow. When we talk about biodiversity, we are talking about this incredibly beautiful, interconnected web where every single living thing has a vital job to do.
Moving right along to Section 2, sorting the plant kingdom. Let's organize our botanical backpack and figure out how to group all these wild varieties of plants.
So if you just look outside, it honestly looks like pure green chaos. But if we use some basic features like plant height and the type of stem they have, the chaos instantly turns into 3 neat categories. First, we have herbs. These are your short plants with those tender green stems. Think of a tomato plant. Second, you've got shrubs. These are medium height with hard, woody stems, and they branch out super close to the ground, kind of like a rose bush. And finally, trees. The tall giants with thick, hard trunks where the branches start way higher up, like a big mango tree.
Interestingly enough, you can also categorize plants just by zooming in on their leaves. We use a term called venation, which is really just a fancy biology word for the pattern of veins on a leaf. There are 2 main designs you need to memorize here. The first is reticulate venation. Picture a messy spiderweb or a complex net spreading across the leaf. You'll see this on stuff like a hibiscus plant. The second is parallel venation. Think of these like straight racing stripes running right next to each other from the base to the tip. You'll see this perfectly organized pattern on blades of grass or massive banana leaves.
Now let's go underground, because roots totally have a sorting logic too. Plants basically choose between 2 types of subterranean anchors. Up first is the taproot system. This is where the plant drops one massive, thick main root straight down into the dirt, with tiny side roots branching off of it. Mustard plants do this. The alternative is the fibrous root system. Instead of one big anchor, it spreads out a tangled wire mess of thin roots shooting right out from the base of the stem, just like your everyday lawn grass.
All right, listen up, because here is the absolute ultimate cheat code for your biology test. Everything we just talked about is connected. If you look at a plant seed, it tells you everything about its leaves and its roots. Plants with seeds that split into 2 parts are called dicots. And dicots will absolutely always pair those messy spiderweb reticulate leaves with a deep taproot. Always. On the flip side, plants with a single-part seed are called monocots. And monocots will always rock the straight-veined parallel leaves with a messy fibrous root system. Commit that to memory and you're going to crush the plant classification section. Let's switch gears to Section 3, grouping the animal kingdom. We're going to categorize their locomotion loadouts.
Just like we grouped plants by stems and leaves, we can group animals by what I call their locomotion loadout. Basically, what specific body parts do they equip to get around? And the diversity here is just wild. An ant equips 6 legs to crawl. A pigeon dual wields wings for flying and legs for walking. A fish goes for the fins and a streamlined body for maximum swimming speed. And a cow? It just relies on 4 sturdy legs to walk across a field. Understanding these loadouts is really the first step in seeing how animals interact with their world.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 4, habitats and cool adaptations. Basically, the survival gear needed for specific levels. Let's get our definitions locked in. A habitat is just the specific place where an organism lives. It's the environment that naturally gives them the food, water, air, and shelter they need. Think of it as the specific level of the video game. Broadly speaking, these levels are either terrestrial, meaning land-based, like sweltering deserts and freezing mountains, or aquatic, meaning water-based, like ponds and deep oceans.
Now, if the habitat is the level, then an adaptation is the specific biological upgrade or buff a creature equips to actually survive there. These are special physical features that let plants and animals handle extreme weather, dodge predators, or find food when there's barely any around.
Let's look at the ultimate hot desert tank build, the camel from Rajasthan. This animal is an absolute masterclass in physical adaptation. It's got 4 incredible upgrades. First, extra long legs, specifically to keep its main body high up above the radiating heat of the sand. Second, wide hooves that act like snowshoes so it won't sink into the soft dunes. Third, that famous hump, which is actually a specialized storage unit for food when times get rough. And fourth, its internal biology is completely rigged to conserve water. It excretes dry dung, hardly any urine, and get this, it absolutely never sweats.
But watch what happens when we switch the server. If you take that concept of a camel and put it in the freezing cold mountain desert of Ladakh, its adaptations completely flip. It trades those long legs for much shorter, sturdier ones that give it better balance on the Rocky Mountains. Instead of dealing with heat, it grows a super thick, heavy coat of hair to survive the freezing winters. And it rocks 2 humps instead of 1 to manage the extreme winter food scarcity. It's the same animal family, but an entirely different biological loadout based on the habitat.
This breakdown brilliantly illustrates how the environment totally dictates biology. Different habitat levels force entirely different survival strategies for both plants and animals. Up in the snowy mountains, a deodar tree grows in a cone shape, so heavy snow just slides right off without snapping its branches, while the rhododendron plant stays super short to avoid getting blown over by the fierce winds. Down in the ocean, seaweed develops immense flexibility to ride the water currents, and fish evolve sleek, streamlined bodies to cut through water resistance. It's all about surviving your specific level.
Finally, let's look at Section 5, Protecting Our Living World. It's time to talk about saving the game.
Here is the harsh reality. When human activity damages these habitats, whether we're talking deforestation, pollution, or climate change, plants and animals lose their homes, and that leads directly to a catastrophic loss of biodiversity. Because of this, massive government initiatives have been launched over the years to protect highly vulnerable species. For instance, back in 1973, India launched Project Tiger to pull Bengal tigers back from the brink of extinction. More recently, in 2022, they kicked off the Cheetah Reintroduction Project, and right now there are ongoing efforts actively creating protected sanctuaries for critically endangered birds like the great Indian bustard. So big moves are being made.
But biodiversity conservation isn't just a job for the government. It relies heavily on ordinary citizens. A perfect example is the famous Save Silent Valley movement down in Kerala. A botanist named Janaki Ammal, alongside thousands of everyday people, fought a relentless 10-year battle against a huge hydroelectric dam that would have completely flooded an untouched, pristine evergreen forest. And you know what? Through sheer determination, petitions, and awareness programs, they actually won. They successfully saved the entire valley's ecosystem.
And local communities have actually been protecting biodiversity for centuries through something called sacred groves. These are basically undisturbed patches of forest found all over India that are traditionally protected by the local villagers themselves. They enforce absolute, strict rules, no harming animals, and absolutely no cutting down trees. It's an ancient, super effective method of conservation that turns local forest patches into absolute safe zones where nature is just allowed to thrive.
So, as you pack up your notes and get prepped for your exam, I want to leave you with a crucial question to think about. You now understand this incredibly complex, fragile multiplayer game of life happening all around us. You know how perfectly plants and animals adapt to their habitats, and exactly what happens when those habitats are threatened. So, what small, specific action will you take to help protect the living world right in your own neighborhood? Think on that. Good luck with your studies, and I will catch you in our next explainer.